Hello, Kings and Queens. Once again, my name is Doing. I'm one of the board for African Business Club. Today, our financial literacy discussion is titled Be a Star at Your 9 to 5. Maximizing your income through a stable career is a way to build your net worth while growing your generational wealth. The journey towards attaining and maximizing your finances through your career starts by climbing the corporate ladder through, through leaving a trail of excellence along the way. Today we have the perfect man here that can, name Mr. Michael Holmes. Michael Holmes is the CEO, COO, and the Executive Vice President of Yale New Haven Health. He's a great leader and is actually one of my mentors at work. So I'm very proud and happy to have him here today. I'm very excited to have him share his knowledge and his journey with everyone today. Thank you, Michael, again for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
We can.
Excellent. So I'm honored to be here and to learn more about this great club, and honored to tell a little bit about my story and then address some of your questions. So I love the title, How to Be a Star at Your 9 to 5. And I would say, if you have a 9 to 5, then this is going to be appropriate for you. But what you'll hear me talk about too is one of the things to be successful at is how you diversify your income and not just depend on a 9 to 5, to be successful, to take care of your family and fulfill your dreams and goals. So I thought what I would do before we jump into the questions is just tell you a little bit about Mike Holmes and how I ended up being the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer at Yale New Haven Hospital, which is the second largest hospital in the country with almost 1,600 beds. My journey began back in Indiana. I was raised in South Bend, Indiana. I got two sisters. My parents still live there. I went to Indiana University down in Bloomington, Indiana, and I ran track, and I also got undergrad in health administration and a minor in accounting. My goal was to be an accountant, so I started off heading into Indiana University to be an accountant, but I couldn't mix going through business school and running track. We were gone almost every weekend. So through consultation with my dad, who is my mentor, he encouraged me to look into health administration. And what I liked about health administration is it has a little bit of everything. It has obviously your clinical and your patient care areas, but it also has administration, it has information technology, it has legal, it has facilities and real estate. You deal with the community, you do strategic planning. In short, you had a little bit of everything, from folks who, make sure that our patients have food, make sure our employees have food, that our areas are clean, to people, who are doing research and developing clinical trials and applying science to clinical applications for new technologies to keep people healthy. When I finished my undergrad in health administration, I came back home and I started at the bottom of our hospital system, which owned a home care durable medical equipment company. So I spent my first 3 or 4 months out of college delivering wheelchairs, hospital beds, commodes, respiratory equipment to patients' homes, making $5 an hour. I actually rode my bike to work to get in. And I wanted to do that because I wanted to start in health administration versus some of the other opportunities that I had. I quickly moved up and moved into a billing area, and then I moved into administration, and then I went back to the University of Notre Dame to get my master's in science administration. The master's in science administration program I purposely sought out because it's an MBA for people that work in not-for-profit. So I had a lot of my fellow students were in community settings, housing, education, healthcare. And, our purpose of our program was to think about how you manage teams. Our job really was not in our training to learn how to do all the specifics, but to be able to manage teams that are working on the specifics. And that kind of felt good for me. It fit within, all my experiences in athletics, because I've always worked very, very well with coaches. I assumed additional responsibilities through the hospital. And one of the ways that I did that, which is one of the words of wisdom I'll leave behind, is I ran towards a lot of the problems. So when everybody was talking about, oh, this is broke or that's broke or this doesn't work, I was always one of those individuals that raised my hand and said, hey, let me see if I can work on it, see if I can fix it. And I was able to accumulate quite a few problems through my career, which helped move me up, the organizational charts. A lot of times, when we would step back, after a year or so of work, we would do our strategic plans, and a lot of the big things that the organization was working on, I was working on as well, because I was always, asking to work on those problems. After 8 years there, where I ran into roadblocks and moving up to a vice president position, I was a director at the time. I was successful in moving to Columbus, Ohio, to another set of hospitals that was a part of our system. So the other thing, my second words of wisdom is, that you're going to find times in your career where you're ready to grow and the organization is not ready to grow with you, then you're going to have to make a calculated risk or a calculated choice. Is that organization going to continue to grow with you in the time frame that you are willing to grow? For me, the answer was no. And I decided to leave South Bend with my folks where I grew up and go to Columbus, Ohio, where I was vice president at the age of 30 for home care, hospice, home medical equipment, home infusion, home therapy. We had skilled nursing facilities, and I did that job for about 8 years as a vice president. Now, my third message to you is about 2 years after being a vice president, I started getting other opportunities for chief operating officer jobs. And to me, because I was young at 30, was successful getting that vice president's job, I turned down some of those opportunities. My logic in looking back at it was that, I really haven't proven myself at that vice president position. That was a mistake, so you're going to get to an opportunity where you're going to have things happen. You're going to grow. You're going to have the ability to exceed. And when those opportunities come to you, doesn't make a difference how long you've been in the position. Always keep your eyes open and always discern additional opportunities when they come about. Sometimes those boats come to get you and you're not ready for them, but that's the boat that's going to help you get to ultimately your end goal. So I worked in that job for 8 years, loved every minute of it. And then I moved into an interim chief operating officer and was going through that interview process where a previous boss of mine was in Jacksonville, Florida, and recruited me down there to become the president and chief operating officer for St. Luke's Hospital, which was a part of Ascension, which is one of the largest Catholic healthcare providers in the country. I worked down there and I led a team that we filled out about 100 applications. I had the opportunity to write the whole business plan for the hospital, the operating plan. I had a chance to hire my whole executive team, which was one of my goals because previously I was always one of the few Blacks that was in healthcare administration. And this gave me the ability to recruit a team that looked like me, that I was confident that we could work together. And this team hired 1,800 employees in 12 months, and we took over our hospital when Mayo moved about half of the patients about 12 miles down the road, and we took that over. And then another opportunity came about 3 years later, and I moved back to Chicago because at that time we had a 4 and a 5-year-old, and we wanted to get back closer to at least one of our parents. So we moved to Chicago. And I ran 2 hospitals on the south side of Chicago, and I was there for 5 years. Complete turnaround. Loved it. Loved the opportunity. Loved my neighborhood. Just love Chicago. And then in 2013, early 2013, Yale New Haven Hospital called and said, we bought another hospital, a Catholic hospital, and you got quite a bit of Catholic healthcare, as well as 3 years working with Mayo. Would you be interested in coming and running the hospital and help merge the two together, which I did. So I've been here since 2013. Actually, next week will be my ninth year anniversary. And it's just been a phenomenal journey. Why has it been a phenomenal journey? This is my third acquisition process that we've gone through. And what I've learned is it's really about the leadership. You got to get yourself around like-minded individuals. And the goal of this acquisition was to grow the St. Rayfield's campus, because the York Street campus, which we're only 5 blocks apart, was full. So we moved a lot of our spine and orthopedic care from our York Street campus over. We moved our adult geriatric unit. We moved our bariatric services. And then just last year, before the pandemic hit, we got approval for $765 million expansion, which will include adding about 200 more beds onto the hospital, about 2,000 parking spots. We're going to double the size of the emergency department and add about 40% into our heart and vascular area. So I was able to do that because, again, I ran towards problems. So when there were problems, one of the first problems that I ran into after being here a couple of years is our emergency departments. Emergency departments were known for being very inefficient. We had some challenging physician leaders, and my boss would complain about those areas all the time. And the chief of the emergency medicine department called him, frequently to complain about things. And I volunteered to work with him, and he was like, "By all means, take it." And it took us about a year to turn that around. The second big problem was psychiatry. Psychiatry was always one of those areas where we thought that you could never make money in, was always full. We have more service, more demand than we have supply for. And that was another area that, I volunteered to work into. And 3 years into that journey working that team, we made money in that clinical service. And that was the first time, according to our CEO in her 42 years, that service has ever been made money. And then the pandemic hit. And in my role as the incident command officer, making sure that we were prepared for any emergencies, the pandemic, the COVID-19 experience that we ran into fell into that. So it was my job to work with the team. And I would say that this team did an outstanding job preparing for COVID, managing through the first wave of COVID, and now we're in our second wave of COVID. And, through all those experiences, running towards the problems, measuring where you start, making sure you got good team members around and staying focused, on the mission, visions, and values of the organization, but making sure you stay focused on the outcomes. I was promoted to Chief Operating Officer the 1st of February. So that's Mike Holmes' story. And, hopefully even through that story, I shared some gems for you to be a star in your 9 to 5. Before I open up the questions, I would tell you a couple things. If you're going to be a star in your 9 to 5, the first thing you have to do is you have to show up to work. Now, why would I say something that simple? Because a lot of people don't show up to work on a regular basis. You got to show up to work. The second thing is you have to get along with your boss. Your boss is the one who's going to do your evaluation. Your boss is the one who's going to give you opportunities. So if you don't have a good relationship with your boss, you need to fix that. You need to fix that as soon as you can. The third thing that I would tell you is know what your job is. A lot of people have jobs or in jobs, but you don't even know what your job is. You have to step back and think about what is your role. And your job is to solve a problem. If there was no problem, there would be no job. if there was no problem, there would be no job. So what is the problem that you have been asked to solve in your job? And then once you're doing those three things, raise your hand up and ask for opportunities to grow, or look for problems and volunteering to grow. Those things help me be successful. They may help you be successful, but that's what I would say. You know, if I was to answer the question, what does it take to be a star in your 9 to 5? So let me pause. That's a lot, and appreciate feedback, or we can jump into the questions.
Thank you, Mr. Michael. That's whoa, so many gems that I don't even know where to start. Your background information and your journey and wealth of knowledge is definitely commendable and worth emulating. So before we get started into the questions, I just want to remind everybody, you can write your questions in the chat window, and I will read them once we get to that question and answer session. Or you can also raise your hand, and I'll kind of keep a tally of the order, and I'll call upon you once we get there. So with that out of the way, we can get into the question. The first one that I have, Mr. Michael, is that okay to call you Mr. Michael or Mr. Holmes?
Absolutely. That's
okay.
Fine. Thank you.
Awesome, no problem. So from your experience, what are the qualities that you think are necessary? I know you had mentioned one of the ones that stuck with me is know where your job is, right? A lot of people don't know what is expected of them, right? And I was chatting with a friend the other day. I said, you can work weekends, work 18 hours a day, but if you're not fulfilling the role that you've been hired to do, right, it's not going to come out. They're not going to see your worth. So you have to know exactly what is required of you, to be able to, like the title of this presentation is, be a star, right? So from your experience, what are some of the things that you feel maybe people are lacking, or that is absolutely necessary? I know you touched upon one or two of them. I just want you to expand on that, so people can really get it.
Yeah, it's a great question, and let me expand and let me repeat a couple things that I would say. Are qualities that you have just to be in the game. So I can't tell you how important it is to show up at work. Thank you for that first one. If you're not at work, then what you do is you're creating a perception that you're not dependable. And for me, if you're my teammate and you don't show up, that means I got to do your work. And if I got to do your work, I'm not happy. Why should I be? Same. If I don't show up to work and you got to do my work, you shouldn't be happy. You should be putting pressure on me to say, show up to work. So don't be that individual that doesn't show up to work. Now, we know that life gets in the way and there's all kind of things, that happen. So your job is to make sure that you're communicating. And that's why the second thing that I tell you is you got to have a good relationship with your boss. You and your boss have a good relationship and you communicate. They're going to give you feedback. They're going to tell you what they need to do. They're going to help you course correct if you don't have the skill sets or the qualities, or you may do things a little bit different. But what you're really doing when you have a relationship with your boss is you're establishing trust. And trust is key in any successful relationship. Think about the people you trust. What would you do for those people you trust? Probably anything. So you want to establish that type of relationship with your boss, and then the third thing that I would say too is just, and I'm assuming you're not going to get a job if somebody didn't see the minimum qualifications or characteristics for you to do the job. So I'm going to give you that, there's some things that you'll have to keep learning on. But once you get into that job, it's your job really to think about what is the job. Like for example, my job is Chief Operating Officer. So everybody's probably heard of a Chief Operating Officer, but all Chief Operating Officer jobs are not the same. My job in managing almost $4 billion in revenue after coming through a pandemic where we've had a very profitable hospital that had about a 4% operating margin. And today, after treating almost 5,500 COVID patients and we have a hospital that now loses about 2.5% operating margin. My job, first and foremost, is to help the organization steer back towards profitability. A year ago, that would not have been my job. My job would have been helping improve processes and, because we were doing so well, really not to break up things. But my job now as Chief Operating Officer is totally different. And I have to understand very clearly what is my job. Also, I have to understand very clearly what is my boss's job and what does my boss expect from me. So my boss's name is Dr. Keith Churchwell. He's a neurocardiologist. This is his first presidency job. He just got promoted into this job in October. So for me, I've been in healthcare in management for 32 years, and Keith has not. He's been on the physician side and he's been on the administrative side for 10, 12 years. So I have skill sets, strategic planning, and insights that could help him, but I need to make sure that whatever I see and how I see it get done, I do that through his eyes and through his direction. So you got to really know, what your job is. And then I would just go on a little bit more. I've always encouraged people, when you start a new job, or you're even going back and reflecting on your job right now, is what is the current state of your job? So, if you're responsible for sales, what's your sales numbers today? And in a year from now or 6 months from now, you need to be able to measurably say, yeah, I had $10 in sales today. And in 6 months now I have $50 in sales. Whatever that measurable metric is your starting point. Write that down. Think about how growing from $10 in sales to $50 in sales is a part of your job and will help your organization, but also make your boss look good.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So I do have a follow-up question to that. I know there are a few questions in the chat window, but my question would be, how do you fix a relationship with a boss that doesn't like you, or if you stand on the wrong foot with your boss? How do you mend that relationship?
That's a fascinating question. So I would say I would approach it the same way, with somebody who's close to you. How do you fix a relationship, where they don't like you? It's all about relationships, the same kind of skills that you would probably do with your spouse or your kids or your parents or your buddies that you grew up with or went to school with. If they go sideways and you have to fix it, how do you go about fixing it? You need to be able to have a conversation and open up. Okay, what are your expectations? What from your perspective, where did things go wrong? And from your perspective, how can we get those back on track? And sometimes, it's not you being right. It's not them being right. Sometimes the biggest problem that we have in any relationships is communication is hard. It's easy to screw up communication. We all have different experiences, so we interpret things differently. So, I could say, I could go outside today and say it was a gorgeous day. And my wife and I walked our dog, 6 miles today. It was absolutely gorgeous. It was freezing for her. It was cold outside. She's got this long coat on, we're both in the same day, having a very similar experience, but we interpret it differently. So you got to open that communication up is what I would say. You have to ask, from their perspective, and I'm careful with those words, from your perspective, what happened, what went wrong from their perspective, what can you do to get the boat back on, going in the right direction. And then, you want to try to have as much clarity as possible. So you don't repeat the things, that was upsetting to them, to make you feel that your boss doesn't like you. And you could try all those kind of, you could try all those kind of things and it doesn't work. That means you need to have a plan B a plan C, a plan D, so you may need to find another job. You may need to find another organization. Um, you could keep running into the same obstacle and keep trying to fix it the same way, or you could take a different approach.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I'll share a quick story that happened about 2 weeks ago on my job. So luckily for me, I've got a good relationship with my manager, but I called in about 5 minutes late into a meeting because my previous meeting was uh, ran late, right? And I got chewed out for it, well deserved. And it said you need to, your manager of this and this, and you need to be on time. And it said if you can't make it on time, you need to let people know. Just communicate, because if you don't, people don't know what you're doing. People don't know why you're late. People don't know if you forgot, if you slept in, if you're in another meeting. You need to communicate. And I thought a lot of us would take for granted, 1 minute, being late to a meeting, 2 minutes. You're like, oh, okay, it's. But just that communication, even if you're going to, mess up, even if you're going to screw up something, just communicate to your manager. And I think that helps to foster relationship and make it better, and also get good feedback from the manager. So that kind of goes along with what you just shared.
No, and that's a great story. And what you're acknowledging too is, things have changed in how we communicate over the last year. When you do communicate, and communication is very difficult. When you think you're going to run late, that's good for all of us to make sure that we send a text message, or
Yep.
Send an email. Meeting may be running over, so people know. But you guys have probably all experienced this in COVID. Now when we have these Zoom calls, at 5 o'clock, people are on and they're ready to go, like nothing else existed before that time. So let me pause and just say I apologize, because I had the times mixed up. I thought it was 7 o'clock tonight, not 5. So I apologize for being late. But that's a sensitivity that we should all know, that the rules are changing.
Correct.
During COVID and after COVID, and logging on and being on a Zoom call right at that time is critical. It's much more critical than walking in a room a couple minutes late.
Yeah. All right. So we have a lot of questions. We're going to see if we can run through most of them. So the next thing that I have on my list is, people often say you need a sponsor, an advocate higher up in the company to pull you up. Do you agree with this? And what has been your personal experience?
Yes, I think a mentor is absolutely critical. And I think one of the benefits of a sponsor or a mentor or advocate is to help you understand, the culture of the organization. A lot of times you're going to come in, if you get trained, you're going to get trained on the technical aspects of your job. You're not going to get trained on the cultural aspects or the political aspects of the organization. And knowing those and how and who makes the rules, is almost as important as the technical aspect of your job. And that's what a mentor can do. A mentor can help you, discern different options that are coming up, help you think about, okay, I got this problem. How do you go about doing that? And, how would that be perceived, before you actually, do some things. But they're also your advocates too. So they're going to come to me. They're going to come to, your mentors and leaders in the organization, and they're going to try to get some type of feedback on how you are, and, when you have people in the organization that can give you a thumbs up, say this is a good person, you're going to have that opportunity, to at least get through the interview process. So I like to encourage people to have, a couple mentors, but I would also say is it's important for you to have, when you get together with your mentor, there's a balance of getting to know each other, establishing that relationship. Again, communication, and seeking advice. Words of wisdom, just like the conversation that we're having today. So you may have one or two questions, what you're thinking about, your next move, what you're thinking about, how to be more successful in your job, or you have an issue that you're trying to think through, because you're going to that mentor really to talk about tapping into their experience. And so a lot of my mentors, which I still have quite a bit, I try to do the least amount in talking as possible and listen way more than I talk.
Thank you for that. The next one I have is how do you, so knowing that you need a mentor, what are great ways to get one, or how did you, go by getting, your mentors? I know it's kind of weird walking to someone and say, "Hey, sir, can you be my mentor?"
Yeah.
And maybe you can, but what do you think are the best ways to approach someone that you'd like to be a mentor?
Well, first of all, I would say that that's the first thing is, how do you select your mentors? What is important for you in a mentor? What would you expect to have back in a mentor? To me, I like to have mentors, that I respect, that I see as a role model, that they're doing something that I would like to do. They're in a part of the organization that I would like to get into. And then, I think even as important as to seeing them as a role model, you need to take some time to, do like a 30-minute, hey, I just want to do a touch base meet and greet. Um, and before, most people that you go to, if you just say, what you aspire, to learn more about how they got to where they are, because that's your aspiration, most people will give you some time to talk.
That's true.
I don't think that there's many people would be, just blow you off after you give them a big compliment like that, and you just ask for 30 minutes. Now this is the perfect time, because you can do a Zoom call with a lot of folks, and it's not all the travel and all those types of things that goes into taking time, which could be one of the barriers, but that meet and greet gives you an opportunity to see if this individual, do you guys have chemistry, and do you want to ask them to be a mentor, but you have to have chemistry, with your mentors, that's how I started out. I started out, outside of my parents, who both were, my mentors, with people that I had a lot in common, and that, I had a lot of respect for how they managed and where they were in the organization, and it was both of a combination of a professional relationship and a personal relationship. Because at the end of the day, we're people, and relationships are important.
Yeah, thanks for that. Good point mentioning time to move. I know that one of the things that plague um, some people in our community is the fear to move, right? A lot of people, especially when you make a good living, you've got good benefit, you're important to the company, but the fear of, am I going to get something better out there, especially when you're comfortable, right? People don't like to leave their comfort zone, right? What would you say to kind of help, change that mindset? Because the truth is, the moment you're not performing, or the moment they don't think they need you, they will drop you, right? They're not loyal to you. So how do you, help or explain, the fear that people go through in maybe changing job when they know that they have more to offer?
Yeah. So let me flip that around. Okay.
Sure.
Why shouldn't you have a fear to stay? I mean, what's so comfortable about being comfortable?
Hmm.
What's what? Why would you let somebody take advantage of you for what you're doing?
Good
Is there
point.
don't you think that there could be just as much risk for you staying and somebody taking advantage of you? Definitely knowing that you won't take your skill sets, your unique skill sets, and go into a competitor. and coming back and whooping their tail, whooping that company's tail?
Good point.
But most of us we do that. We get into a place, you know, we add a lot of value, and then we think somebody owes us something. Don't nobody owe you nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, let me just be real. Don't nobody know you. No, you know, you got to add value every day. And the biggest value you have is trusting in yourself. And if you trust in yourself, you're going to continue to show value. Even if you go someplace and then the next place you go to doesn't work, you haven't lost. You got a learning experience, and you're going to apply that learning experience when you get back up on your feet. You're going to run faster than you were before. So I flip that question around and say, why should you stay? You stay because you're valued. You stay because your goals are being met. Your growth opportunities are being achieved. You're getting stretched. Your ideas are heard. You have opportunities to add more value. And when you don't, you have to make a decision. You just comfortable staying, where it's at because it's just comfortable. And if you're just comfortable staying where you're at, then you shouldn't be complaining that, nobody's treating you well, right?
Yep.
You got to make people treat you well. So I think I flipped your question around, but I think I still answered the meat of your question.
No, yeah, yes, you did. Yes, you did. Thanks for that. So with the fourth industrial revolution and the VUCA, so volatile, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, uh, revolution that's coming, what do you see as a future of regular employees with a lot of things moving to AI and, software and, computation and all that stuff? What do you think is the future of the typical 9 to 5 that we have now?
I don't think that there's going to be a typical 9 to 5. I think in the last year, we probably jumped ahead, and used the technology, maybe 10, 15 years. I think what we're going to find out is that, the world is going to function on a 24/7 basis. Look at us. We could be anywhere right now. I don't know where everybody's at, but we're here having this, engaging conversation. We can get business done at any time now. I don't have to jump on an airplane. I don't have to jump in a car. I don't have to stay in anybody's hotel. I can use our connections, and we can set up opportunities like this to figure out, how to add value to a job, to an organization. So I would say erase the 9 to 5 mentality. Mm-hmm. And then I would say, I think project management skills are going to be critical, because opportunities are usually very defined. There's a problem. There are people that are developing solutions. And then there are processes, to continue to keep those, there are processes, to continue to manage those problems. And that's who people are going to look towards. Again, like I explained my job. My job is to help guide the organization, back to a profitable standpoint. Why? Because if we're not profitable, I can't pay my employee increases. I can't buy new capital. I can't renovate areas. I can't expand to meet our mission, new locations. I can't fund our pensions. I can't recruit new employees or physicians to take care of patients. All of those are projects. So I got certain teams that are working on all of those projects, and they're very measurable. And we have certain steps that we're trying to go through. Some will be successful, some won't, but we'll learn and we'll keep going. And that's exactly, what you're talking about when you talk about VUCA is, you don't know. You take the information that you have right now and you apply it, and you look for opportunities. And that circle is always going to be there. And will those same rules apply next year? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. I don't know how long the pandemic is going to last, you know? But what I do know is just we have a mission, vision, and value, and that's to take care of our patients. And I'm going to do whatever I can in this position to help Yale Haven Hospital do that. So I think, project management, it goes, I think a couple things, all employees, you got to know how to, use Windows. You got to know how to use PowerPoint. You got to know how to do Excel. You got to know how to, load stuff in LinkedIn and Twitter all the modes where we communicate and people are out there establishing connections and relationships. Those things are just a given. You gotta have some technical ability these days, to manage. We're probably going to be communicating a lot, by Zoom and Microsoft and Google and Facebook, and I don't know what else is next, but you got to be prepared to, get in there and keep learning.
Yeah, interesting that you mentioned project management, because that's one of the skills that cut across every discipline, right? It doesn't matter if you're an engineer, it doesn't matter if you work in the finance sector, it doesn't matter if you're in the energy, health, most problem needs to be projectized to be effectively resolved, right? And if you have that skills and know how to do it, you have doors open to you in almost any field.
That's, and these things, hopefully you guys are seeing a lot of these things, connect, so you could get on, and you guys probably have the same type of experience. You've been in a meeting or you're on one of these Zoom calls, and it's 15, 20 minutes into the call, and it's like, what are we talking about? I mean, we just see people are just rambling on and that. No, I think where we're going is, what is the problem, and what is the process for us to address the problem? And as your scope gets bigger, part of my job is to prevent the problems from happening in the first place. So I'm trying to look around the corner where the problems are going and making sure the problems don't happen in the first place that messes up our business. But and like you said, project management, once you figure out what is the problem, then you can apply project management in the process to solve the problem. Again, no job, there's no job that exists because there was not a problem. Jobs exist to solve problems.
Yep. All right, let's run to one of the questions in the chat room. Someone said, when you run towards the problem, okay, so this is referencing something you had said earlier. You said, you run towards the problem and try to find a solution. So someone is asking, how do you get the whole team to get into the mindset, especially if you can't solve the problem by yourself? So for example, the town might not like it when you're creating more work. I'm guessing the team might not like it when you're creating more work by running towards the problem. And especially if you have team members that, and they're like, man, we've got so much to do already. Why are you trying to bring, more to the table? How do you help, bring your team together to see that this is something that's worth addressing?
Yeah, so that's a good one. That's a good one. And sometimes you're not going to bring everybody along, so I think that's the first and foremost that you have to understand. But those people that you can bring along, I think you have to connect, how potentially solving the problem can make their lives easier, can make their jobs easier. It could be an advantage for them. Could create opportunities for them if they engage with you in solving the problem, to help them grow, or to get additional opportunities. So I think you got to be able to, connect the problem to, what the company is doing, connect the problem to, maybe what the department is doing, and then also be able to connect to the problem to, you know, how this impacts the individual, you know, from maybe a negative standpoint, but also from a positive standpoint. You know, if they're engaged and they participate in helping solving the problem, you know, it could make their lives, make their jobs, you know, better. But sometimes, you know, a success is just to keep people from sabotaging your work, you know. And I've had to do that too, where I just had to say, you know, well, you know, I know, you know, you got a ton of stuff to do, you know, just don't try not to make my opportunity, this effort that I'm working on, harder than it is.
Yeah.
And we know we all have coworkers like that. You know, they'll go out of their way to make things more difficult for you.
Yep. Yep. Thanks for that.
But,
Can you share some of the tools and resources, books that has helped you to go from an individual contributor all the way to the level that you're in now, and some of the things that's helped you along the way to become a better leader of people?
yeah, I mean, I like to read autobiographies, you know. So I like to read about people, you know, who've been there, done that, you know, through history, through business, through sports. You know, I would think my earliest learnings are, you know, watching some of the best athletes and how they did it, how they train, how they eat, you know, what made them, wanted to pursue, you know, the highest levels and be the best at what they do. And then, you know, as I kind of came through college, I started to study people, you know, who did the same types of things. You know, for me, I would say probably, you know, my learning really began, you know, my freshman year in college, you know, in African American history, and learning about, you know, folks that were very successful, you know, the Booker T. Washington, and, you know, starting their own colleges, you know, the Malcolm X, you know, the Marcus Garveys, you know, the world, you know. And then I probably have adapted more into, you know, business, you know, and who's doing what, you know, as my career started to go. You know, a couple books that, you know, that I go back to is, you know, The Speed of Trust. I think is an outstanding book. I pulled off, and I have, you know, right here on my desk, you know, Good to Great Again from Jim Collins, because I think that I think good right now, you know, a lot of people are doing good, but I do think that, you know, that's what drives the complacency. You know, we get comfortable and making all these, you know, making a lot of successful moves, and, you know, the comfortableness, it'll get you in trouble. You know, people settle for that. And then, you know, I'm going back and I'm reading my Six Sigma books again too, from the project management. I was trained as a green belt in Six Sigma back in the mid '90s, and I'm going back right now. Yep, that's the book, Covey's Speed of Trust. I'm going back and reading again on Lean Six Sigma and Six Sigma to understand, you know, project management. Specifically, what I continue to be attracted to in Six Sigma is, you know, how you defined a problem. You know, a problem is specific to a time, is specific to data, and there's an error rate, you know, and you can measure how a process, you know, creates an error rate. And a lot of people don't do that. You know, you get around the table and you talk about issues, but you don't define the problem, or you define the wrong problem. You know, so you're trying to solve something that's not going to help the issue. So those would be a couple of things that I would that I'm out there. So I got a bunch of books that are stacked up all over this place. I got Barack Obama's book, autobiography.
Oh, good.
I'm reading about white fragility. Fascinated in them. Trying to figure out and then this is what I would say is, this is The Last Man Standing.
The Last Man Standing.
Last Man Standing. This is about Jamie Dimon and his ascent to Chase. And that's my third time reading that.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we're getting pressed for time. Does anyone on the chat have any questions for Mr. Michael? Please do so by raising your hand or typing the question in the chat window. And while they're doing that, I do have a follow-up question to, the resources that you have mentioned. How do you create room, given your level in your corporation, to continue to learn? How do you manage your time? Because time management is one of the things that I think a lot of people still struggle with, right? Especially with work and life balance, and then adding learning to that, right? How do you do that?
Yeah, it's not easy, so that's a work in progress, to tell you the truth. I'm blessed. I got an 18-year-old who's about to head off to college. I got a 17-year-old son who's a junior, who's they're both into the sport. So you try to balance that. Then you got new demands of job, and then, the relationship. So, I think a lot of it is I still commute to work. So I got about a 30-minute drive in the morning. So, I'm doing my books on tapes and, kind of trying to get plugged in. I personally have found that I like to learn a lot by video. So, I try to do a couple of TED Talks a week, 10, 15-minute videos. I find that those are great to keep me kind of, recharged and thinking differently and looking at different industries. So, it is a challenge to create that. It's a challenge to create that balance. But I think it's our responsibility to keep changing, to keep growing, and to try to tap back into, when you first started out in your career, and how, hungry and energetic you are. You're a little more cerebral about how you do it now, and again, to me, I think a lot about what is my job and how can I do my job more efficiently.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I've got one final questions, and then we'll start the closing. What is one thing that you'd wished, someone had told you in your early days of your career, and how have you, I guess, learned along the way, not knowing what you would have loved to, have known back then? Um, and what's your biggest challenge now as a leader, in your current position?
I would say that there's two things. The first is, one of the things that I learned is, I can process information pretty fast, but I need to make sure that, people are engaged, people have an opportunity for their opinion. So ask lots of questions, talk less, listen more. Ask lots of questions, talk less, listen more. And then the second big thing that I mentioned too is this. Don't wait until you think you're ready for the opportunities. Respond to the opportunities as they come to you. So don't get stuck in a job thinking that you have to show a lot of value in that position when another opportunity pops up. And how I've kind of tried to, share that is look, if you're under a vice president's position, 1 or 2 years should be as long as you're in that job. You should be moving. And then when you hit the VP position, you should be in that job less than 5 years, unless that's just where you want to be. If that's your ideal dream job, or, you got geographic limitations, or, other things that, keeps you in that job, don't get stuck in those jobs until you get to your dream. And then you just got to keep learning.
Boy, oh boy, just so many good gems. Don't know where to start. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. This has been an amazing session. And now I'm going to hand it over to Doing to kind of close us out. And while Doing is doing a close up, I will post a poll just to, get people to answer a few questions about today's session. Thank you again, Mr. Michael. I'm lost for words. Thank you.
Absolutely. Best of luck to everybody. And like I say, don't let them tell you no.
All right, Michael, thank you. I just want to say thanks before you leave. Actually, the last segment usually we will ask for like a common sense, but I think you've given so much common sense already that I don't think I even need to ask you. Like you just said, don't let them tell you no. Honestly, I think that's a perfect common sense for everyone. Here. Just keep moving, And like I said in the beginning, this session is it's not our typical sessions. Usually we do the financial literacy. But I like to say, you can't pour from an empty cup. So, and a lot of us, the resources we have is our 9 to 5, our corporate jobs. So you also need to know how to maximize that and be a star. So this was a very great conversation. I really, really appreciate it. It's always an honor to talk to you. I've learned a lot from you. So I don't want to make this a personal thing, but I just want to say thank you again for every time. I know with my career, you played a big role to where I am today in my job. So, and that's why I was, very glad to bring to bring you here to share, to share you with everyone on this conversation. So thank you, and also to everybody that joined us today. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Clubhouse, and then YouTube. We'll post this video, African Business Club 2020. And also, we have a Discord app and a WhatsApp group where we share a lot of information every day with like-minded people. So please join us on the Discord app. You're missing out a lot if you haven't joined us yet. And we have the Talk to Us Tuesday and the accountability group. It's just a new initiative we're doing where it's kind of like having a gym partner that will kind of, we share our goals with one another. So that's going to happen this this Tuesday. Tuesday, March 9 is our next session for the Talk to Us Tuesday, and the accountability group. It will be at 7 p.m. So join us if you can. We will send the Zoom link out later on. And we also have the book club that we are currently reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. We encourage everyone to join us in reading that book. And eventually we will announce a date where we will actually have a meeting to discuss the book. And lastly, let's remember we are all kings and queens. So please, let's treat one another as such. And like Michael said, I like that. Don't let anybody tell you no. So Michael, thank you so much again. Do you have any last word for us before we let you go?
It was an honor to spend some time with everybody.
All right. Thank you,
Michael.
guys. Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, everybody.